Welcome and thanks so much for being here. Today we have Cynthia from Zambia. How are you doing today, Cynthia?
Good, and how are you?
Doing well. And so you are the UX product owner at Open Energy Labs right now, and you've had quite a interesting career. Can you walk us through what your career has been like and how you ended up to where you are now?
Okay, so I first started off as a systems administrator at
Mhm.
a school here in Zambia. Mostly my job had to do with really administrative, looking after the network, also building on the network. I remember there was a time when they built new buildings, so I had to be in charge of making sure that the network was extended to that new building. From then, I got bored. I wanted something new, something a new challenge. So I decided to start perfecting my coding skills. I had some skills from school, but I didn't necessarily use it in the industry. So I actually started building on those. I took up trainings under an organization called Asikana Network. Asikana in one of the languages here means ladies or girls or women. So their sole aim is to actually help bridge the gap between the male and female participation in STEM careers. My first training was in databases. I was teaching, I think there should have been about 10 to 12 ladies that I taught basics of database management systems. Whilst doing that training, there was a man that attended the training who was from an organization called Bongo Hive. Bongo Hive is the first innovation hub that was ever started here in Zambia, and he's one of the co-founders. So he listened to my training and he liked it. So he approached me later in terms of what I was aiming at doing in the next 5 years, and I told him to say I was trying to get my feet into software development. And it so happened that he had a project that was kickstarting a few months after that day. So he asked if he could get in touch, and I gave him my contact details. It should have been, I think, about 3, 4 months later. He got in touch and introduced me to a company called Lima Links. So Lima Links had this idea of connecting small scale farmers to markets. We had this issue, well, it's still sort of existing, where small scale farmers would not know the actual worth of their produce and they would sell it at low prices, and some of them would incur a lot of losses. So the idea was to create a USSD system, because here in Zambia, most of the small scale farmers are on feature phones as opposed to smartphones. So we decided to do a USSD platform where they can see the market prices and be able to actually tell how much their produce is worth. Under that project, I started off as a back-end developer. I had to learn Python. In school, I learned Java, so I had to switch to Python. I was given 3 months to learn, but luckily, I learned in a month and started building on their back end, which they are still using right now. It should be hosting right now about over 60,000 farmers. After that, the product manager slash project manager we had to leave. I saw an opportunity. I was interested in what he was doing in terms of being like a middle person between all the other functions in the organizations and us as the developer team. And I approached the COO then, because she was the one I think also doing the duties of a CEO before they actually hired one. I asked her if they could give me an opportunity to actually learn on the job and take up the product management role. And they were willing. They actually helped me look up resources that I needed to read on online. So I took up a position of product management, but then I was still developing as a developer, and I ended up being the lead developer. I worked there for about 2 years. Then I got an opportunity by another company called Mwavu. They were in the education sector. So this one was going to be purely product management, and I got interested in product management, and I really wanted to learn without having to juggle between software, like developing as a developer and still running the show as a product manager. So I took on the opportunity because I really wanted a job that would just give me tasks that had to do with product management. I took it up. The project lasted, unfortunately, for 8 months as opposed to 2 years because the government had to put it on hold. They were doing a collaboration with the government. There, I was in charge of helping them align all the education materials to the Zambian curriculum. Initially, they were using the UK curriculum, so we had to switch it up a bit. So I was in charge of doing user interviews, looking at the mockups, sort of like liaising with the developers on the user needs as well. So I was interacting with both of them and other stakeholders in the project, especially the Zambian Curriculum Development Center. They're in charge of overseeing any educational content that is being published in Zambia. So I had to do a lot of back and forth meetings and discussions with them, and them reviewing our content to make sure that it was well aligned with our curriculum. Um, when the project was put on hold, I had to leave, and I joined the man that helped me get into software development at Bongo Hive. I went there to sort of help them get agile. Their team at that time was not quite agile, and I had learned the agile methodologies and how you go about turning a team agile. So I went in, I was in charge of their software development team. I taught them tools like Jira, where we started putting in the tasks and just seeing how the tasks are moving along. Um, that went well. I also, other than just overseeing the development team, because they also do entrepreneurship programs for entrepreneurs, I once in a while would actually get involved in those programs as well, deliver some trainings or help them structure some trainings for organizations that needed help either in realigning the operations of their organizations. I worked there for a year and I got poached again. There was another organization called Explorer Academy. So what they were trying to do was come up with a fellowship program for people who are trying to get into software development, but sort of make it a shorter term, as opposed to going to the university, you do the 4 years, and then maybe later on you start trying to learn the actual tools that the industry needs, because they notice the gap. You find our universities here would be teaching certain tools, and then when you finish school and you try to get into the industry is in need of all different tools. So for them, they wanted to really close up that gap and at the same time offer job opportunities to the graduates from the fellowship. So I went in as the head of product. I was part of the team that initiated the whole thing because I was amongst the first team members to join them. And why they poached me is because at Bongo Hive I had started an internship program where we invited about 56 graduates from colleges and universities. We gave them material that was well aligned to the tools that we were using in terms of software development, because Bongo Hive tended they still tend to several clients. So clients will go in, give them the idea of an application that they want, then they develop for them. We reached a point where we didn't have enough talent, and it was hard to find the right fit in terms of just doing ordinary interviews. So I spearheaded an internship program where we got 56 participants. We gave them material. We deliberately made material that was precisely aligned to what we were doing and the tools that we were using, the programming languages that we were using, the sort of applications that we were building for our clients. They had 2 weeks to learn that material. We used the GitHub Classroom platform. After that, we gave them assessments. They submitted the assessments. We filtered through and got a final 30. Sorry, the 30 came in on a weekend. this phase, we wanted to see how they would work with team members because we noticed most developers that would engage, well, sort of like lone wolves. They wanted to work alone and were not quite um, eager or not well vested in terms of collaboration. So we wanted to see who can learn and who is willing to learn to actually collaborate. So we brought them in on a weekend, divided them into teams, gave them a problem that they needed to hack on. They hacked through, they presented their solutions, and through that, we were able to identify a few people that were a good fit. We selected 6 of them that eventually came onto the internship program. And I think 3 of them now have been promoted as actual senior developers right now as we speak. So the other organization, Explorer Academy, they heard of what I did. So they they sold me their idea because they thought it was similar to what I was already doing, and which indeed it was. Except them, it was more of a fellowship, and then they were adding on connecting these graduates to jobs. So I went in, worked with them for about that was 7 months, close to 8. There's a reason why I didn't stay that long. And the reason is that the environment ended up being not a very conducive working environment, unfortunately. And I got to a point where I had to pick either to stay or save my mental health and my happiness and just stability, right? So I had to make the hard choice of leaving. Unfortunately, the environment was not conducive anymore. After I left, I got into consultancy. I did a few projects here and there until I landed the project that I'm working on with Open Energy Labs, who they have designed a custom printed circuit board, and they are teaching youths how to build their own or design their own PCBs and sort of extend them to a point where they can contribute to creating renewable energy sources here in Zambia. Because currently it has improved, but there was a point where we really had a lot of bad or lack of access to electricity, good electricity. So the idea is to enable the youths to actually come up with solutions and extend the circuit board to a point where they can do other things other than what they are teaching them. So I went on board as a UX product owner to help them research on the exact features that the users needed in terms of the application where they want to put their learning content, learning material, and other things that they felt they needed to find out from their users in terms of the content. Was it easily understandable or do they need to switch it up? Yeah. So that is about me.
Thank you for that. That was a really rich history. So thank you for sharing all of that. What is your experience like being as a woman in tech in Zambia?
Well, it has been amazing. At the same time, there have been some blockers that I've faced. I think the most common ones are where when I was just starting off, I would find organizations where I would interview in, especially when I was still in under networking and system administration, and they would ask questions like, "Would you manage if you were required to run cables, get into a ceiling board, or get high up a pole to do installations, a router or server or stuff like that? Will you manage as a woman?" And I felt that was a bit well, I didn't quite expect it, but I guess maybe it's the thing where most of them were still having this mentality that some of the duties in the tech industry are meant for men. Only men will have the courage to get into the ceiling board or run the cables or do the patch codes, lift up the server and stuff like that. Those are some of the most awkward moments I've had. Other times is when you find maybe the interviewer, I've used my local name instead of Cynthia, and they feel I'm a male, and immediately you get into an interview and they're like, "Oh, you're female," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm female." I wear dresses and stuff like that, and they'll be like, oh, and immediately you can see on their faces like they're no longer even that much interested in finding out more about your capabilities. Um, I haven't had. I've had friends who've had more or worse incidences, but for me, I think that is the worst of it, and the fact that sometimes I've had to do jobs with male colleagues and eventually find out they get more than I do, or their opinions I heard more than my own, even though my own are viable. And yeah, so it at first it was a bit discouraging, but I guess being part of an organization like a Sikana network quite helped, because then I was in an organization with fellow women who were in STEM careers, and they were also breaking the barriers. So yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any advice for other women in tech?
Um, all I would say is at first it may seem difficult, and of course it's not a smooth path. They will find different people. There are some that are actually supporters and helpers, whether they are men or they are women. Because some of the hurdles I faced, sometimes they were coming from fellow women as well. um, it's not, sometimes it's not as smooth as it may seem, but I guess what made me make it to where I am is the fact that I didn't give up. I kept on reminding myself where I was aiming to be, and learning. Learning always helps. Learn as much as you can. Be curious about new things, and even if they are outside the boundary of your work or your job description, try to learn as much. And yeah, some people will give you how can I say it, negative vibes, but be your own cheerleader. Sometimes it may be difficult, but I guess really reminding yourself about the goal and your objective, you will get there. It is possible. We are capable. Yeah.
Great advice. Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing your career story and all of your knowledge. It was really inspiring to hear. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation once again.